Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Women in Leadership, which is brought to you each month by the TurkNet Leadership Group, always dedicated to unleashing potential in leaders and organizations. And for almost 40 years, the TurkNet Leadership Group has been around this business. And one way we make it happen, that we unleash the potential in individuals and organizations, is to provide a community for advice seekers like you and me to be able to engage with leaders of amazing achievement. And that community is called Women in Leadership. So those of you who are not as familiar with Women in Leadership, we've been around for over 24 years now. And so today we get to hear from another extraordinary woman of achievement, and I can't wait to introduce her. But in the meantime, I'm Ann Quiello, and I have the great fortune of being your host for Women in Leadership every month. I want you to feel engaged in this community, so please begin by telling everyone who's here, which organization you represent. Love to hear from you. Let's see who we have here. Good morning, Yolanda. Good morning. Good morning, Callie Furman. So good to see you here this morning. And Barbara Jacobson. Thank you, Stephanie Green, for joining us. Fran, good morning. Always good to see your name here. Nancy Cranford, yay. Nancy is my colleague here at TurkNet Leadership Group. Nadra Hunter, thank you. Oh, and you're from the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta. We love the Federal Reserve Bank. We've done a lot of work with you all. Good morning, Susan Hitchcock. So glad to see you here this morning. And Allie Fox from Talent Connections. Oh, yes, we know Allie. Thank you so much. Alice, I'm sorry. Alice Fox, not Allie. Gabby Byer, good morning. Good morning. Leanne Ivy, good morning, Leanne, from Southern Company. Great company and organization that we do a lot of work with. Thank you for joining us. Gabby Kozub, thank you, from Manhattan Associates. Welcome back. I think we've been here before. Tammy Smith with PTC Inc. Good morning to you. And good morning, Deb Howery. Wow. Wonderful. So good to see you. I heard your name yesterday. Had lunch with Karen Robinson. I don't know if you know her, but anyway, I think you probably do, but good to see you here this morning. Good morning to Karen Thompson from One Street Residential. Yay. Good morning, Liza Williams with Hemophilia of Georgia. Yes. Very familiar with that organization. Thank you for joining us. And good morning, Shamika Harkness from Southwire Company. And good morning, from Kim. Good morning, Kim Shamate. So glad you're here again. Good to see you, see your name. Good morning, Lynn Turknet, the co-founder of the TurkNet Leadership Group. And I'm sure Bob is in the background. So good morning to both of you. So good to see you. And Debbie Killigan, thank you so much for joining us from the Bobby Dodd Institute. And let's see. Oh, hi, good morning, Vicki. Vicki Abelson is our leader, our CEO. So good to see you this morning here with us. And yes. Deb, Karen is Women in the Cap Atlanta. Yep. She was telling us all about that organization. It's interesting. And Dorothy Townsend, good morning. Happy Friday to you. Christine Roberts, welcome. And let's see, who else do we have here? Well, Scarlett Pettit, thank you so much from Georgia System Operations. So glad that you're here. Well, we want you to stay engaged. So please, as we go along this morning's discussion and conversation that we have, please go ahead and enter any comments that you have into chat or any questions. We may not get to your questions till later on. However, please go ahead and enter your questions as you think of them. And we'll certainly try to get to your comments as we go through our conversation. So please stay engaged. All right, so I think it's time. Oh, by the way, we have over 100 people registered this morning. So if I didn't get to your name, hopefully you'll understand why, but we are so glad that you all are here. So I want to go ahead and introduce our featured guest, Tori Kaplan. Fascinating career. Tori is the founder of the Tori Collective, which she describes as a creative strategy and impact consultancy that helps organizations, leaders, and families build something that lasts. In other words, makes an impact. She brings this rare combination of breadth and depth to her clients because of her experience in this field. Shaped by a corporate executive career defined by meaningful impact. Her leadership roles have included serving as Vice President of Corporate Communications at CSX Railroad and Chief Corporate Responsibility and Sustainability Officer at Truist, where she guided organizations through crises, transitions, and periods of significant growth. Exploring her website, torikaplan.com, and I got lost in it. It is really a fantastic website. It feels like walking through a beautifully imagined home. Each room reveals another dimension of her capabilities. And so beautiful imagery from the foyer to the back garden and then out into the surrounding neighborhoods. The experience illustrates the cross-sector reach of all of her work. The imagery is simple yet powerful, and it clearly communicates the range of ways Tori helps nonprofits, corporations, and families create lasting, meaningful impact in their communities and beyond. In 2025, Tori was honored with the Onboard Excellence Award, recognizing senior executives who exemplify career achievement and who actively mentor and champion professionals who are seeking to advance their own paths. She serves her community as a member of the Board of Trustees for the Atlanta Botanical Garden and as a member of the board of the Carolina Farm Trust. And that brings us to today, and that is to Women in Leadership, where we have the opportunity to learn from Tori's very distinctive approach to leadership and her perspective on corporate social responsibility today, and how each of us can build our own capabilities to make a sustainable impact. So welcome, Tori.
Good morning.
How are you this morning?
Doing great. Thanks for
Good,
having me.
good. Well, I wanted to start with a few quick questions so we can get to know the Tori behind the title. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So, coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Morning person or night owl?
Morning.
Morning. Okay, good. That's a good thing for us. Um, one word your closest friends would use to describe you.
Creative.
Mm. One book which has had the greatest influence on your leadership.
I have to give you two. Sorry.
That's all.
The first one is A Wrinkle in Time by Madeline L'Engle. And the second is Dare to Lead by Brene Brown.
Which one by Brene?
Dare to Lead.
Oh, Dare to Lead. Yes, one of my favorites too. Um, can you describe Wrinkle real quickly?
Yes, Wrinkle in Time is a children's story. I read it when I was 9 years old, and the bottom line is the heroine of the story. Her name is Meg, and she actually saves the lives of her father and brother by using the very things that people touted as her flaws. So it's a story of insecurity to confidence, and something. It was my favorite book as a kid, and I still get it out every once in a while and read it.
Interesting. That's neat. Okay, so a habit or routine that keeps you grounded.
Cooking and
Mhm.
sharing food with people I enjoy.
Yes, I want to get into that in a moment. An accomplishment you're most proud of that doesn't appear on your resume.
Motherhood.
Mm. The career you might have pursued if you weren't doing the work you're doing today.
This is a hard one. Um, because I have a lot of interests, but one of them is that I would have loved to have been a CIA operative disguised as a chef.
Really? And I'll go ahead and spill the beans now. You really are a trained chef.
Yes.
That's yeah, that's amazing. Um, so in fact, I want to talk about your career because you did begin as a trained chef. Um, and because it hasn't been a traditional one, you began as an event planner and and at a resort, and ultimately became the chief corporate responsibility and sustainability officer for one of the large nation's largest banks. So, to me, that is all about community, bringing community together. So, how did you go from being a chef, an event planner, all the way up to the C suite? And I mean, were there pivotal moments in your career where it assisted you or enabled you to move in or move up to the C suite, or is it just a sort of a kismet type of thing? Of how did it all happen?
So I would say it's a little bit of synchronicity. And I do believe that sometimes when you work hard and you keep your head down, you can harness luck. And I think of synchronicity as being in the right place at the right time, mixed with a little bit of hard work.
Mhm.
And so that was definitely, I can look back and see many moments where I just happened to be at the right place in the right time, but I was also working really hard and trying to be excellent at what I was doing at the time. And so there, I think, when I think back there, are places that I chose to be that maybe weren't popular. And I didn't have a direction coming out of college and made a choice not to go on spring break with some of my friends and went in a different direction and ended up on a plane to France 2 weeks later to work at a
Wow.
cooking school and never had imagined anything like that. And similarly, moving from event planning to corporate responsibility was really working hard at being a good event planner and doing that job, which someone saw as creative and expressive at a time when a company needed to galvanize its efforts around being a better corporate citizen. And I had
Yeah.
no idea or background in corporate life. And someone put their trust in me because I had delivered something else that they thought could translate. And so
Hmm.
when I think about it, it's not that I had any grant. I had never an idea of working in the corporate space. So in each moment, I surprised myself because I was, doing things that I never thought that I would ever do.
So I understand you were at the Greenbrier, right? You started
Yep.
out as an event planner at the Greenbrier, which is
Mhm.
amazing. Is that, and that was owned by CSX Railroad?
Sure was.
Yeah. So was it a matter of somebody from, because the next big position for you was at CSX Railroad. Did somebody happen to notice you, then happen to notice your work as an event planner and the quality of your work and how you delivered it? They noticed that, and then was it a matter of being tapped on the shoulder, or did you actually pursue another position in CSX?
It was again a sort of a moment of synchronicity in that I
Mm.
had a pretty deep history with the Greenbrier and some family members who spent their careers there. And uh, the parent company CSX at the time needed to have something filled, a need filled, which was that they were entertaining 250 customers during the Super Bowl when it was coming to Jacksonville, Florida. And they knocked on the door of the Greenbrier and said, "We need help. Could you send someone?" And so that was the moment. So I went to deliver and help the parent company plan a series of events, and then ran into the general counsel there, who asked if I would stay on and continue doing events, but start working on the company's philanthropy. And
Yeah.
so that was a really interesting time and filled with a lot of fear and anxiety, but her answer was, we've got an entire corporation of linear thinkers. We need some creativity. So it
Interesting.
wasn't that I had, certainly didn't have skills in corporate responsibility or even sort of what philanthropy looks like at a corporation. But she trusted me, and I got the best gift of all, which was to learn in the job.
Hmm. Yeah. By the way, speaking of your Jacksonville time, Bob Turknet has just said, "Welcome, Tori. Long time since our days in Jacksonville. We really appreciate you speaking at WIL this morning."
Well,
So,
the feeling's mutual. I remember the day that we spoke in a conference room at CSX, and you all were working on Jacksonville University work at the time, and we had some really great connective conversations that have stayed with me. So thanks for that, Bob.
yeah, yes, yes. So connections really, I think a theme this morning as we go through our conversation, community, connections, and impact. So, was there a point in your career when you realized I belong in the C-suite?
No.
No.
And I wondered if the feeling would ever come, and it really never did. But what did come is an understanding of the shift in what I was doing on a daily basis. And so, one example of that I think of a lot is when I started to notice that I was using my skills of influence more than just execution. And so, was I able to move a perspective on a difficult topic? Was I able to move a community to a consensus? And I think some of the things that are more important than, whether I ever belonged are what are the skills that I started using and had in my toolkit at that time.
Were those skills that came natural to you, or were they ones that you targeted to develop over time? How did that happen?
I think for all of us, it's probably a blend of both. I think there are things that you're inherently skilled with just because of the way you were made. I think there are things that you are conditioned to in according to your environment and the people that you're around and grow up with. And then I think there are things that you watch in other people and figure out how to learn. And so
Mhm.
paying attention to those things and watching other successful people and how they perform their work. What do they say? What do they do? How do they act? So I think there are things that are innate and things that can be learned for sure.
Yeah. So influence is a big one.
Mhm.
Uh, how did you, what was your process for influencing? Why are you so successful with influence?
Someone that I had the good fortune of working with for many years and is my professional mentor shared with me very early on, always start with your audience instead of what you need to communicate. And so when you take a moment to think about who you're talking to, where their minds may be, where their hearts may be, instead of here's my agenda and here's what I want to accomplish,
Mhm.
the art of influence becomes a lot easier. And so it's really about positioning the audience first and the people you're trying to either move or sway or get behind you. And it's a lot easier to do that when you think about them instead of yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Starting with who it is what are the needs of the person that you're trying to influence, if I got that right?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Susan Hitchcock has said you were an influencer. Let's see. Oh, you were an influencer before influencers became a thing.
Oh, thank you, Susan.
And Nancy Cranford has said the skill of influence is so important for a great leader. And that's why I stopped there, because that is absolutely key, especially as you think about moving into the C-suite, I would think. Was there ever a time when you doubted your ability to to be effective in the C-suite?
All the time. I think doubt is it's a healthy thing. It can kill the warrior if you let it. So you have to be able to sort of harness that doubt and make it productive. But certainly, I think when you have new experiences or things that you're asked to do that you've never done, I remember the first time I had to speak in front of a board of directors. That was terrifying.
Mm,
And so, did I doubt myself? Of course, I did. And did I have the support of a mentor who would always, and almost for 20 years after making that first presentation, would text me ahead of the time that I was prepared to go with the line from The Lion King saying, "Remember who you are." And so
mm,
the doubt was always alleviated a little bit by having somebody behind you that was there to help make sure that you were leaning into who you were.
mm. Yeah, that can be very difficult unless you really are grounded in who you are and what are those differentiators. I'm wondering, other than influence, what were some of the other differentiators that you think proved your abilities to move into higher level leadership positions?
I would say two things really. One, I never forget where I came from. And I really honestly tend to look at just about everything through the lens of ingredients and recipes. And so when
Mm,
you're in a kitchen and you're creating something, you're asking questions like, who am I serving? What do they like? Uh, is this the right set of ingredients? What is the need I'm trying to fulfill? What is the experience I want them to have? And using that sort of analogy to simplify how I view business challenges has really helped me because it grounds me in a place that I'm very comfortable. And then I can sort of get through the uncomfortable parts accordingly. And, who doesn't like great recipes at the end? And second, I would say relationships.
mhm,
And not just, I've watched a lot of people over focus on the upward aspects of relationship building. And certainly, yes, that's important, but I like to think of it of up, down, and sideways because you never know where you're going to find your next employee, your next best friend, your
mhm.
next mentor. And I've always just tried to use the barometer of having interest in people. Regardless of where they sit in an organization. So, relationships, I think, are critically important.
Yeah, yeah. And I want to get into that. But I did want to also read a couple of the chats around cooking and being a chef. Nadra Hunter says, "Love that. Cooking is my love language for my family and friends." Fran Shockley said that she just read last night Grand Diplôme in Culinary Arts from La Varenne École de Cuisine. That's terrible French, but read it last evening. Fascinating. I don't know if that resonates with you in that particular title. But yeah, Fran, I happen to know, is also an amazing, amazing chef. All right. So back to you mentioned remembering where you came from and also about relationships and connection. And that all brings to my mind this post that you have on your LinkedIn site. And it's a post about your father.
Hmm.
Can you describe to us, to the rest who maybe hasn't read that yet, but could you describe that post about your father?
Sure, I will try my best not to get emotional. And he may or may not be on this session here today. At any rate, it was a Happy Father's Day post to just make sure that I took a moment to acknowledge him for all of the things that he taught me. And one of them was always to find the person in the room that you don't know and be curious enough to introduce yourself and then make it about them. And through asking questions and trying to find always that point of connection, he then never knew a stranger. And
Mm.
he also tried to remember those connections as a way to build that relationship forward. And so I loved how he did that. I was lucky enough to sort of accompany him in many social settings, so I could watch him work a room per se. Um, but he did it very naturally, comfortably, and he took genuine interest in the other person.
Mm.
And then, by virtue of that, made them feel like they belonged.
It sounds like a naturally curious man.
Yep.
Sounds wonderful. The line I loved in that post was most of us, when we enter a room full of people, look for one person that we do know. Your father looked for someone he didn't know. And I love that because it's so true. It's so
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
Uh, so, so tell us a little bit more about where you came from and the influence of oh gosh, the people or events in your life on who you are. When you say you remember who you are or where you came from, what specifically do you mean by that? Other than your father's influence, which sounds beautiful.
Well, I think I have parents and relatives beyond that that were rooted in service industries. And
Mm,
um, when I think about where I came from, it really is the mindset of coming from a place of service. And it's not something you just give, but it's a way of being. And it's a mindset that you use when you walk in a room. How can I be of service to the people in front of me? How can I serve this organization? How can I serve my family? Sometimes it's literal, sometimes it's not. But that's really when I think about my roots and some of the things that I feel proud to carry with me. Service really floats to the top.
yes, yes. We had a saying in my corporate life. I used to work for Delta Airlines, and our founder used to say, it's service from the heart,
Yep.
service from the heart because it's authentic. It sounds like that's what it is for you, um, because it is so entrenched in your background. Callie Furman has said, love that advice from your father and love that you're carrying on his legacy by sharing it with us. It's nice,
I'm
nice.
trying.
So, moving back to women and careers and so on, what advice do you give women who may be questioning or doubting whether or not they're ready for their next move?
I think fear is healthy as an evaluation tool because it helps to sort of ground you. And I would say consider whether it's fear out of scope and size versus readiness, because I think some of the argument there is any of us ever ready for that next move? And you could argue yourself that you never are. But I guess the more important thing and something I've thought about throughout the years is would I regret watching someone else do it? So would I regret that not taking that move out of fear of lack of readiness and then regret watching someone else go through that role
Yeah,
as a way to sort of evaluate that. But
yes.
the truth is, some of the best experiences, I'm sure a lot of folks on this session today would argue that they weren't ready for that thing they stepped into. But wow, did it change their life?
Yeah, yeah. So, not letting fear get in the way. And I loved how you put it earlier, and Nadra Hunter repeated it here. She said, I absolutely love the don't let doubt kill the warrior. So, having that frame of who you are, the warrior, not letting the doubt or the fear get in the way of that warrior, and that approach to your role.
Yeah.
Love that. So, well, in all your roles, you were in communications, crisis management, corporate responsibility, sustainability, philanthropy, executive leadership. Was there an underlying key principle, leadership principle that remained constant?
We talked about service already. I think that's definitely one of those things. I think the other is just finding your inner courage and um, using courage to sort of persevere because sometimes you really do need to just put it out there and give it a try. And certainly, when people have laughed over the years about what what does what sense does any of this make in terms of your career journey? And service is definitely a throughput, and being attracted to opportunities where I could be of service, working in service-oriented institutions, but
Mhm.
also just I think courage is courage to try and courage to just jump into something knowing you don't have all the answers, but that, by the grace of God and some great people around you and a little bit of luck, you can probably solve for most of the things that you need to do.
Yeah, yeah. So where did you get that courage?
I don't know. I mean, I think again, I attribute a lot of the good parts of me by having great parents who taught me not to be afraid, who taught me to believe in myself
Mhm.
and to, push forward even when it's hard. And some of that may also be being the first of four kids. I don't know. Birth order may have something to do with it. But I think as well, when you have and do something and have experienced success from using courage, then you build that muscle and
Yeah.
you continue to, push on that and say, well, it worked for me before, so can I find it in myself to do it again? Um, and corporate careers take that sometimes because things change, leaders change, circumstances change. And so just remembering that and pointing back to the times in your own career when you can remember using that is sometimes very helpful.
Yes. Yeah. Maybe even capturing it somehow or another, so it's not forgotten. Yeah. So courage builds courage, is what you're saying. And it sounds like you do a masterful job of managing your emotions and channeling them
Not
into,
always.
not always.
No, not always. I think I've worked at that, and I have a lot of passion, and sometimes that can overlead, and I can sort of let that sort of fill a room a little bit too quickly. So I work on trying to be more measured,
Mhm.
as a sort of continuous improvement in my leadership style. Um, but I also think that based on the kinds of work that you're doing, showing a little emotion here and there isn't a bad thing. When I used to work on the restoration of communities after a derailment at the
Mhm.
railroad. And that is not a place where you want to be emotionless because you
Right.
want to make sure that your employees and the team understand the stakes. And sometimes a little emotion is the way to do that.
Yeah, in fact, I wanted to park there for just a moment because Susan Hitchcock has brought up a good point, and that is she was hoping to hear about how you advise clients to navigate an organizational crisis. So I can imagine it's a lot of emotional management,
Mhm.
but also what goes into navigating a crisis like a derailment or any other crisis that you had to help.
Well, I think you have to first understand the impact of what's happened. Was this something Mother Nature caused? Was this something the company caused? And what does that look like first and foremost? Because it shapes how you talk about it, the efforts you put underneath it, and the connection back to the service that you provide every day. So I think about all of these industries that are affected when we have a hurricane or when, there's a tornado, and people need to put their lives in jeopardy sometimes to go and bring and restore service back to a community or a company. And so the alignment on the goal and what happened and what do we want to solve for, and making sure that the people around you have a true sense of what it feels like to the people on the ground. Um, and how
Mm,
putting yourself in their shoes, you would want to be treated, and making sure that you're thinking about that instead of just swooping in and being the benevolent, company here to solve all your problems. Well, what
mm,
are your problems? And are we being sensitive to fulfilling those needs based on the circumstances, and they
mm,
change.
mm,
And having a core set of folks that are poised to understand that, and are willing to put themselves in an environment where they may not be sleeping for days, because their job is to make sure that things get restored back to normal as soon as possible. And
mm.
how do those people then need to be cared for so that they're doing their job, but you're pivoting your service to your employees, because you're not on the front line. And so really understanding and breaking apart that crisis so that you've got the right skill sets in the right places at the right time, and you understand the mission and the goal.
Yes, yes. And it sounds like what I would think that there's got to be a plan put in place proactively uh, should there be a crisis, right, in the future.
Yep.
So having that group of individual, I'm just guessing, but having a group of individuals who are trained and recognize what they have to do minute one after a crisis has taken place.
Absolutely. And I think it's again something that never stops in terms of its evolution, because circumstances change in terms of what the crises are.
Yeah.
I think, when Katrina came, no one had experienced, a disaster quite like that, in certain circumstances that were outside the scope of what we knew in terms of response tactics. And I think lots of companies learned in the moment. But then it's really about, what do you take from that? And, again, my mentor used to actually conduct a lot of internal, not just crisis drills, and certainly we had those, but it was also doing an annual study of companies that did crisis response well and
Mm,
not. And what if it was a bad outcome, why did that happen? And what can we learn
mm,
from that? And if it was a good outcome, what can we learn from that? And
mm,
it's something that I think, is omnipresent and needed today. And the world of crises extends now to, things that we never imagined around cybersecurity,
yeah.
around protecting our assets, in addition to the extreme weather events and circumstances along those lines. So
Yeah.
it's a huge part of what responsible companies pay attention to,
Yeah.
and want to be excellent at.
Mm. Um, Thank you for that because I think it's important for anyone that has a responsibility for anything, well, any kind of responsibility for that matter, is to be looking ahead and pre-planning what it would look like to go through a crisis, and what do you need, and what should you plan for. Um, I wanted to also mention this comment, and this was from Kim Shumate, who she says, as one who has been catapulted out of my last space to my current space, this is a brilliant meeting. Thank you, Ann and Tori. This is making so many spaces of confusion make sense.
Oh,
Wow.
thank you for that.
Yeah, very nice. Very nice. And then Nancy Cranford has said Tori obviously has a great confidence muscle. For those that don't forget the importance of self talk and practice self talk. Yes, yes. Self talk in terms of, I think what Nancy means is around emotional management, and making sure that don't allow those thoughts that can get in the way of your success, then become your behavior, where
Mhm.
you actually deny yourself an opportunity. So, all right. So, all right. Well, you talked about crisis management. I wanted to get into your work around corporate social responsibility.
Mhm.
Um, because you did lead corporate responsibility and sustainability for one of the country's largest financial institutions.
Mhm.
And so, for those who may be new to this term, corporate social responsibility or CSR, um, can you describe what it is? What is CSR? And also, any of us who've worked in a publicly traded company may be familiar with environmental, social, and governance, which is ESG. So,
Mhm.
can you clear up any confusion around those two terms, what they are, and their significance?
Sure. Let me just first sort of put a little disclaimer in that these opinions are solely my own. And so
Okay.
these are, sort of hot buzzwords at the moment. So I'm going to take a crack at it in terms of my perspective, but certainly understand, this is subject to large interpretation. But I tend to think of ESG as a set of performance metrics that are in addition to financial performance metrics around enormous, and variance of topics in the ESG front. And so I think of it that way. I think corporate responsibility is akin to corporate citizenship, which was one of the earlier descriptors, is really how a company behaves every day. And certainly there are metrics that underpin that as well. But how is a company in service to its shareholders, its employees, its communities, its suppliers, and its government agencies if that's a part of the deal.
Mhm.
But I tend to look at them very differently. And I think part of what has caused some of this confusion is that everyone has overlaid them all to mean the same thing. And throw sustainability in there, and that's another sort of aspect that people sort of say, well, isn't that ESG or isn't that CR? And I do think of them all as a little bit unique and different. Um, and there are threads of connectivity for sure. But I also sort of think we got a little out of whack with some of it. And just you know, I've often been asked, who's to blame? Um, and I don't know if there's, someone to blame or something to blame, but I do think corporations, particularly as you noted, publicly traded ones, take their cues from investors. And
Mhm.
investors, went from 1 to 10 on ESG in a nanosecond. And I think companies were clamoring to try to keep up. And
Mhm.
lost sight of, am I displaying all these metrics just because, I feel like I need to? Are they important to our business? And sort of taking a moment to realize that it's important to our business to be a good corporate citizen every day. That is our job. And how do we define corporate citizenship can vary amongst companies according to priorities, but that's a job. How we report on our performance, that's a different job. And
Mhm.
and certainly is, the factors that one looks at, an investor or anyone else should be different according to what kind of industry you're looking at. If I'm going to invest in, a wine company in California or France, I want to understand their impacts relative to water access and climate risk over time because we've seen huge impacts to that. But maybe not so much in another metric. And conversely, a financial services organization like Truist, has certain metrics and markers that I would want to see as an investor, I would want to see as a community leader that are certainly very different than, yes, a railroad. And so understanding the nuances of what's important, why it matters, and again, tying those things to things that your employees understand and your external stakeholders understand, and finding that balance.
I see. So help me with this. It seems like ESG, or environmental, social, and governance, is the focus, or the lens through which companies may view that, is more around compliance. Have I got that right?
It
I
can
mean,
be. It
compliance,
can be.
reporting.
And because there are aspects of that are still voluntary, and there are aspects that aren't. And so, again, what we're seeing is different mandates in different places. So the EU has some reporting mandates. The state of California has some reporting mandates. And so companies are grappling with how do we have a unified sort of perspective when we're trying to flex, to the fact that we do operate multinationally, and we do operate in the state of California, and we also work in other states where those metrics may not be favored at all. And so trying to find again balance, and tugging at what's really important and having the confidence as a company to sort of position the work as tied to your business and not just sitting out here on a little isolated hill because, it's in vogue to talk about ESG.
So are you seeing companies placing less of priority around the voluntary piece of this, the corporate social responsibility piece? Um, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of things, and I think it really depends on how the company has viewed the work over the longer term. So companies that are still working sort of on sustainability have realized that being efficient is good for the bottom line, right? And
Mhm.
so they may be talking about it using words like energy efficiency, saving
Uh,
money instead of sustainability, but it's the same work. I think when you think about some of the reporting mandates, and I read the if just touting a great annual report that the Weinreb group does on it's related to chief sustainability officers, but they do a lot of sort of study of what's happening. I saw a stat in that report that just came out, I think about a month ago. It was something like 42% of chief sustainability officers report that there was an increase in head count, but not in their functions. And so what I would say is the work is dispersing itself across the organization and not disappearing. I think companies have altered the nomenclature to curry favor with the sort of political weather.
mhm.
But the politics are just the weather, and the weather comes and goes. And so I think companies are trying to find their way through that. The other stat that I don't think people are paying attention to that I think should be watched over the coming years is that in the big, beautiful bill, there was a change in the way corporations can take a tax deduction for philanthropic work. And so companies must get to a threshold of 1% of their taxable income to take a tax deduction. So if we rewind a little bit and we talk about corporate responsibility as what you do every day when no one's watching, let's all watch what happens with that philanthropic dollar at companies and what they do with that. 1% of taxable income is a big number for a lot of companies. And so I would look at that as a measure of how mature an organization is, how
Mhm.
connected they are to their stakeholders to understand the needs, and what is the logical sort of balance of that given a large shift in that whole universe of how philanthropy has worked. And so I'm not making a political statement. I'm just saying, look at that metric And if you are, a person that studies reports, take a look at the next year's set of reports and look backward and see
Care.
what that
Yeah.
difference is, because I think we don't fully understand the impacts of that yet.
Yes. Yes. One of the things that I noted in particular was the supplier, the supply chain piece of responsibility in terms of what kind of labor do the suppliers use. And it seemed to be that uh, corporate social responsibility, or ESG, kind of put a light on some of those practices, and really hmm, helped in terms of worldwide, well, let's put it bluntly, slavery,
Mhm.
and trying to put an end to that. So I hope that some of this, stays in place, that we don't lose that kind of focus. That's just
Well,
one piece of it, I realize, but
yeah, and look what we're dealing with the sort of outbreak of foodborne illness at this
yes.
moment. And one of the things that, around supply chains that I have, as you probably know, a great love of food and the future of food and how we eat, where it comes from. But one of the things that I was completely impressed by was how fast Chipotle was able to isolate down to the
Mm-hmm.
store where the distribution of these products went, so that they could tame and quell the issue as fast as possible. That wouldn't have happened 10 years ago.
Yes.
But the understanding of how critical that is, in addition to how many, what's our carbon footprint look like in our supply
Mm-hmm.
chain, but that's material information, used in a crisis. And
Mm-hmm.
one could argue that that's a great corporate responsibility tactic too.
Yes. Yes, I was impressed with how quickly Chipotle acted on their particular, crisis. Of course, they need to.
Sure.
There's certainly financial consequences that they don't. Well, this has been fascinating. So it's a good thing that, for many many reasons, that corporate social responsibility, environmental, social, governance, but sustainability is still a thing, because you've launched the Tori Collective, and that's and you're certainly all about um, maintaining or helping companies maintain a sense of responsibility. So tell us about the Tori Collective. How do you describe this new venture?
So it's and I'm a fan of being honest and transparent. My role at Truist was eliminated about a year ago, and that caught me a little bit by surprise. I think if you work in corporate America, it's you can bank on it. It's a probability at some point, because companies are evolving and shifting all the time. But when I sort of stepped back from that and said, now what? Because of my interest in working in different sectors, I wasn't sure if I wanted to pick one.
Mm,
And so the collective was really about what are the places and spaces where I could be of service to
mm,
different either sectors and companies, or different work within companies, because I've had the opportunity to work on a lot of different things. And so it was really about trying to position myself to help where help was needed, and be a sort of resource for companies that may not need a full-time person on a project or a situation, but wanted to sort of offer that through the collective in a way that kept me interested and learning, and at the same time trying to evaluate, do I want to do this full time? Do I want to do this on the side? Do I want to look for another full-time role? And the answer a year hence is I'm still not sure. And so I've
Mm.
had some fun opportunities to do a few things, and I'm enjoying that. And I think I'm very interested in what's happening right now, relative to um, the energy transition, in particular with the technology and AI needs and data centers and how they find themselves in the communities across our nation and the future of food. And how does all of that
Wow.
find some way to make sense together? Because we're going to need to get better at sharing land, sharing
Yes.
resources, and finding ways to live in harmony with each other,
Yes.
based on all of these huge initiatives going on. And so I'm really hoping to sort of lean into that space a little more, because I think some of the early instincts around community engagement and doing that right and doing that ahead, and being a partner and not just dropping yourself, into a community and saying, we're here,
Yeah.
are things that companies are really grappling with.
Yeah.
And so those are areas that are of interest to me. And I just didn't want to limit myself, which is really the backbone of what I'm trying to do.
Mm. Well, having a chef's background, it makes sense that the food, some of the food issues that we're seeing, would make, I mean, that makes sense that you would have an interest in that area. Um, so what, um, I was just thinking about all of the companies that may be private planning to go public. So many companies in that position that um, may not may need someone like you to be able to make sure that they're ready, should a crisis or a need. And we've already talked about there are hard dollars behind some of these initiatives around responsibility and sustainability. So anyway, so I would think that you could be very, very popular. But what kinds of value propositions then do you? I mean, what's your product? What are some of the things that you offer to clients?
I think it really depends. It can be an experience where they may say we're trying to, launch a new concept and we need a public facing event to do that. It could be providing an overview and insights on where they sit today relative to corporate responsibility, sustainability, or even their philanthropic endeavors, and what are they trying to achieve as a business, and is there change needed? And providing that, sometimes it's easier for our company to have someone do a flyover, and connect those dots. And so things along those lines. I think the other space that is very interesting to me in terms of work. And I say this aimed in multiple directions. There is a unprecedented level of transfer of wealth happening right now.
Mm,
And I think there is the crazy explosion of family offices. One, it's uh,
mm,
it's it's trendy. But two, these are very powerful machines that are sort of looking at the future of investing for multiple generations. They're looking at evolution of philanthropy, in terms of what their grandparents may have done, and that this generation wants to be a lot closer to the social and community impact they make, and helping to guide that. So offering a way to partner with those types of organizations to say, where are you? Let's look at what you want to achieve and what are the vehicles and tools that can help you get there.
mm. Interesting, interesting. Well, back to you. As I said early on in the introduction, I kind of got lost in your website. It's full of imagery and it's just very easy to navigate. And so kudos on your website.
Thank you.
But one of the things that struck me about your website is how you have done such a beautiful job of capturing your capabilities, really recognizing, articulating your core capabilities and what you bring to the Tori Collective. So, how did you figure out, how did you identify what your core strengths are that are going to be so relevant and necessary and translate, I mean, really decades of experience and successes into this clearly articulated consulting practice? How did you do that?
So I want to be clear about the fact that it was an imperfect experiment because I think and I'm sure I'm channeling feelings for a lot of people here, when we sit down to describe ourselves, it's really, really hard. Uh,
Yes.
you know,
That's the question, Tori. That's why I'm asking.
yep, it's and so the acknowledgement of that and sort of if you spot it, you got it. But then turning quickly to who are people that I've worked with that can help me understand more about me. So I phoned a lot of friends and said, we worked together, for 15 years. How do you see me? What do you think my
Mm,
capabilities are? Where do you think I'm strong? Where do you think I have work to do? And
mm,
being honest, with yourself as you're collecting all this information, and asking for that opinion that is honest, right? Don't blow that smoke, because that's not going to help me. But not doing it alone was something that I realized I needed help with instantly. And so going back to that well of people that you worked with, people you worked for, people that work for you, friends, family, I ask everyone because I wanted to, make sure that I was positioning myself honestly,
mhm.
but I did not do that work by myself and couldn't, because I think it's that's just something that everybody struggles with. And if you don't, then you're not being honest with yourself.
That's a great, great perspective, getting others' perceptions, others' experiences with you. Great, great idea. So, so for women specifically, they're trying to connect the dot between all their experiences, their accomplishments, the value they can offer. Maybe they're trying to get a promotion or change a role inside their company or start a new business. What's your advice to them?
Find a way to build it outside of the company jargon or the words that you think are the right words. So
Mm,
you mentioned the website of the house. That came to me because I couldn't and didn't want to describe myself in a conventional way, and tried to find a nonlinear way to do it. And so find your house or find your sort of multiple dimensional way, to articulate things, even if it's messy on a piece of paper. And you don't have to be an artist. You just sort of frame it out there, and it will come to you. But I
mm,
feel like women have a really hard time with this because we're always trying to help other people find their house.
yeah.
And
Yes.
so taking a moment to sort of figure out what is your map, what is your drawing, what
Mm,
is your image that helps you sort of frame yourself in a way that you know who you are.
mhm,
One of the things I, loved about, I'm a fan of American history, and I love the way some of our forefathers, were described. They were agriculturalists and presidents and
mhm,
musicians and all of these things. And so I think every one of us, to quote a line from Walt Whitman's Song of Myself poem, I'm large, I contain multiples. We all do. And so whether it's capabilities, or just looking at it through the frame of all what is the multiple of me, um,
mhm.
will help you then figure out how do I articulate for that for this next opportunity. And you may need to curb some things and blow out some things according to that opportunity, but you have a more keen understanding of who you really are.
Yes, yes, yes. That's interesting. Well, thank you for that. And folks, we're going to turn it over to you for your questions here in just a moment. I've seen a few questions in our chat, but please go ahead and enter your questions into chat so we can make sure we get to each and every one of them. But before we get into Q&A, this other question I want to definitely ask. So imagine we're sitting here 5 years from now holding another Women in Leadership event with you as our featured guest. What do you hope people will say about the impact and the legacy that you're continuing to build?
I hope people will know that at the heart of it, I'm really just trying to leave things better than I found them.
Mm,
And when I think about legacy, it's a real personal thing for me. Um, in 5 years, I will hopefully have a college graduate. My only child will be a college graduate in 5 years. And so, to me, legacy is the fact that since she was born, my mantra has always been Charlotte, which is her name, is watching, as a way that I try to conduct myself. And my hope in terms of a legacy that as she steps into adulthood, if she sort of looks back and says, my mom worked really hard and she honestly tries to make the world a better place, and I'm going to take that and pay that forward. Really all
mm.
I need.
As Vicki Abelson just said, so, oh, and just as I did, actually, as a mom, I love that mantra. It is, it's beautiful. Does she know that that's your mantra?
Not yet.
Okay. Well, hopefully she won't listen to our leadership or our
Remember,
morning
she's a
session this
teenager. She doesn't listen to much of anything I say right now.
but I love that. Nadra Hunter says, love that. What are you modeling for your children? What are you modeling for your children?
Yeah.
All right. So let me go back to the questions from our community. Um, all right. And by the way, in chat, Yolanda Martinez, who is our wonderful producer, has put in the names of the two books that you mentioned early on, Dare to Lead and um, A
I've read the
Wrinkle in
label.
Time, which I'm definitely going to read it to my grandchildren. Um, and a lot of comments about A Wrinkle in Time. Thank you for reminding me, Kim Shumate just said. Um, all right. About going back to some of your core principles, so basic to put others first and be authentic with that thought process. That was from Nancy Cranford. Yet it really can move the needle and create a win-win for all. I think that's all about, when you're in any kind of managing any kind of situation, understanding the needs of others. Um, and I'm still looking for that question. Here it is. So from Scarlett Pettit. Hi, Tori. What is a leadership instinct or skill you had to learn to trust even when traditional corporate playbooks said otherwise? Interesting. Leadership instinct or skill you had to learn to trust even when traditional corporate playbooks said otherwise.
I think anticipation comes to mind. People don't talk about anticipation a lot. But again, in the hospitality industry, you are trained to learn to anticipate what might happen next and how
Yes.
to create a plan if it doesn't happen the way you wanted to, and how to pivot. And so I sort of commingle anticipation and ability to pivot um, together because they do go together in my mind. Um,
Hmm.
and it's not just what do I think they're going to need, but what if in delivering it, it's not the right thing? And how do I quickly pivot to not lose the opportunity in front of me?
Then your ability to make that pivot when
Yeah.
necessary, to be able to sense necessary and do it,
Yep.
versus always being the expert, always being the uh, put together, uh, knowing your subject. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yep.
Okay, good, good. Um, Scarlett is also asked, when managing a crisis, how do you keep a long-term vision alive when pressure demands short-term results? How do you keep a long-term vision alive when pressure demands short-term results?
I think you have to imagine what the long-term vision is and remind people of that along the way. What are we working towards, folks? We're at this stage, and here's what's happening, and helping to lay that map. And so I find a lot of times that, it's really working, understanding the Z, knowing that
Mm,
you're going ABC, and reminding folks of what that is all along the way and acknowledging we're not there yet. But that's
mm,
where we're headed. And we've planned for this. We've got steps that get us to this place instead of just simply saying we're going to do this and then we're going to do this and we're going to do that. I think you have to have that North Star understanding so that you can be effective in the short term because you know what you're striving for in the long term.
I see, I see. And shouldn't the leader in that moment step up, step in, and keep reminding people? Um, I would think, as I don't know if you were the leader in a particular crisis or whether you depended on the CEO or the president, or how does what is your experience with that?
I think that again is I would use the sort of similar phrase of up, down, and sideways,
Okay.
because it's not just understanding it from one dimension. You have to, when you work in a crisis related environment, you're dealing with peers across the entire organization. Some of them may be more familiar or less familiar. They too may need to understand what are we striving for, right? And a lot of times, people fly into a crisis, the finance teams or the risk management teams or the legal teams who are doing other work on a day-to-day
Yes.
basis. How do you help them, come with you, right? Where
Right.
you can translate the long-term vision that they can see themselves in, not
Yes.
just here's what we're doing, but here's the why, and here's where we're striving, to be, and then certainly allowing folks to comment and have input and feel a part of. Um,
Yes.
and there's, I hate to say it, but there's nothing like a good crisis to bind a team.
Yes, unfortunately, that's true. And so what I'm hearing, there's got to be a lot of cross communication, keeping each other updated with what they're doing all along the way. So there's got to be a tremendous management of the team, is right?
And knowing your role and not being
Mm,
afraid to sort of accept that you don't know, you may be in unfamiliar territory.
gotcha.
But a quick sort of story, I've been in a number of situation rooms, but we'll never forget there was an admin whose job it was to fill the room with snacks and beverages. Never ask a question about what you wanted,
Mm,
but would put things in there and then pay attention to what people ate. And then the next time she'd knock on your door and say, "Were you the Cheez-Its girl? I just want to make
hmm.
sure," because and
Oh,
then she anticipated the fact that I was going to be in the situation room for hours on end. And yes, I like Cheez-Its. Small thing, not a small thing
Yes.
when you're up, all night long trying to serve a community in the aftermath of something like that. But again, it's not just the leaders, it's all of the people contributing to that. And then it's also looking back after the fact and saying, that was a really great skill. What
Yes.
can we do with that skill?
Yes. So making sure everyone's roles are well defined and that they know their contribution. That's great. So I have a question, and that is it seems like your whole career has been around connection and impact and so on. And you had another post on LinkedIn where you described coming together with a group of community members or members of a community and to perhaps solve a problem. And you talked about it being a collective versus a collaboration. Can you talk to that difference and what you experienced there?
I sort of hearken it to the difference between an passive and active verb. And collaboration is, yes, we're coming together, we're collaborating, we're talking, well amongst each other. Sort of acting in the collective is really taking those things forward. What am I prepared to give and do in my seat
Mm,
to help the person across the table in theirs? And how do we come at that work together? I was very inspired by this organization that is ultimately a church trying to build a multifaceted homeless center for mothers and children. But who they assembled in the room and how they did it was very different than I've seen in a long time. And as a result, at every meeting, there's another, it grows every time by 20%. Not because they're inviting more people, but because more people are saying, how can I be a part of that? And so to me, that is
mm,
the collective where it's not just we get together, we all sort of align, in words and nods, versus we're taking action because we know that we need to in order to get the sum total effect of what is
yeah.
going on here.
Sounds like the mission's very clear and it's going to have quite an impact too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Susan Hitchcock, we probably have one more question. So I love this question. Given we are in a time of technology revolution, in other words, AI, et cetera, how are you personally preparing?
So I am a fan of learning about AI, and I work in all of the different sort of forms and fashions of it. I use Claude a lot and have amended the name to Claudette because it just makes me happier to say Claudette instead of Claude. Um, but educating
Yeah.
myself and playing with it and using it to challenge me, using it to think about how would the next generation of employees think about AI and how they're incorporating it in their day-to-day lives and bringing that forward in their presentations and their work. And what is the difference? And sort of one of the things I've been curious about of late is, how does this generation have the judgment perspective? So if they're going in and putting in things to impress a boss, um, do they have the judgment skills to know whether or
Mhm.
not it's actually good or right? And so
Yeah.
how does AI influence even that, right? And is that learning better prompts? Or is it doubling down on good old-fashioned leadership and saying, let's embrace the aspects of AI that are going to benefit us all, but let's also not forget to teach the things that are the most important because of AI. And I peel that back to teaching judgment, teaching sensibility, and again, back to audience. Who is going to be the recipient of this? And is it
Mhm.
serving the needs accordingly? And is it coming towards the perspective that we're ultimately trying to share. And so I'm trying to educate myself as much as I can. I'm trying to play with it so that I can have a little fun at the same time, because I think you can use it, for all kinds of, different things. But in business in particular, I really am sort of trying to think about those two things happening, because the universe of employees that are most versed are in AI are the least versed in judgment.
Interesting. Interesting. And I think you've got many, many people who just renamed Claude to Claudette. And Susan Hitchcock, who asked that question, says, thank you. Great answer. Well, so I'm going to invite you, Tori, to go ahead and take a quick break, but
Okay.
please don't go away because I have a one last question for you.
Okay.
While you're taking a break, I'm going to tell everybody who to look for next month in next
Okay.
month's Women in Leadership.
So you'll
So,
tell me when to jump back on?
sure, I'll
Okay.
say, well, all right, it's ready. I'm ready for one last question.
Perfect. Thanks so much.
So, our guest next month is Danielle Donahue. She's the executive director of the Women's Basketball Coaches Association and a member of the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame, class of 2025. So, quite a guest. Danielle's career began on the basketball court at Georgia Tech, yay, Georgia Tech, where she was an ACC student athlete and later named an ACC legend. And she's moved on to some of the most influential leadership roles in women's basketball. She spent 7 years at the University of Tennessee, working alongside the legendary Pat Summitt, very well known, helping to lead the Lady Vols through 6 Final Fours and 2 national championships. She went on to help launch the Atlanta Dream as its first executive vice president. Yay, Atlanta Dream, they're doing great. She then served as Associate Commissioner for Women's Basketball at both the Big East and American Athletic Conferences before taking the helm of the Women's Basketball Coaches Association, where she now leads the organization representing women's basketball coaches, a whole bunch of leaders around the country. So you're going to want to register early for this one. It's an in-person event, takes place on September the 18th at the Commerce Club. Doors open at 7:30 in the morning for breakfast. And so be sure to register early and learn about her career. It's expanded to nationwide influence in a woman's sport that is grown tremendously in visibility, in popularity, and in dollars. So be sure to register. All right. So that was a short break, Tori, but come on back for this one last question. We have covered a lot of territory this morning in our short time together. Kelly Johnson said, insightful session. Thank you all for putting this on. And thank you, Tori, for sharing your story. Fran Shockley says, judgment and sensibility. Yes, so very important when deciding how to teach teams the place of AI and projects. And the comments are just wonderful. So we have covered a lot. So the one question I have is, if everyone could leave remembering just one lesson out of all that you've talked about and from your journey, what would you hope that lesson would be?
Be relentless in the pursuit of connection. And when you
Mm,
find it, work like mad to keep it, sustain it, and grow it.
Work like mad to keep it, grow
Sustain
it,
it and
and
grow it.
sustain it. Yeah, connections take work. Yeah. Wonderful, wonderful lesson. Tori, I can't thank you enough. You've been so generous with sharing all of your knowledge and experience and lessons along the way. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure, and I hope you and everyone on the call enjoys their weekend.
Yes, thank you. And thank you to everyone who attended this morning. As Tori said, have a wonderful weekend. Bye bye, everybody.